sync. Cool. I think we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. So Adam, you are the 19th guest on At Home with Mark. So
Wow.
it's cruising along. So this is episode 19, ladies and gentlemen. I've known Adam for a while now, like kind of distance. And I'll tell the story about how I got to start talking to you and everything, and how you kind of guided me to get the two rock that I now own.
Yeah.
But ladies and gentlemen, this is Adam Miller from Australia.
Yes.
We are going to dive in and talk some guitar stuff. First and foremost, though, how are you doing, man? Like,
Yeah, doing pretty good. Yeah, it's been a crazy year. Like, in short, my wife and I were moving to LA the week after the whole world lockdown. So we didn't get there, and that sort of our whole life was planned around that. We'd packed up home, done all those things. So, yeah, it's been just a bit of a readjust into Australian life, which is very good, I will say. And we just finally got a place of our own again in, well, both of our hometowns of Newcastle.
oh, nice.
So we're pretty happy about that, and yeah, it's just lots of guitar playing to screens, and
Yeah.
lots of time to go mountain bike riding, which I'm stoked about, and yeah,
Nice.
life's good.
So is your family and everything like from Newcastle? So that's like where you
Yeah,
grew up?
yeah. Grew up here, so it's just it's a beautiful part of the world. It's 2 hours north of Sydney drive, which for especially American geography of Australia tends to be a little warped. That's still like 10 hours drive south of Brisbane and the Gold Coast and things that people sort of hear about there. And then if you've heard of Cairns, that's like 24 hours north. So
Woo.
it's you know big country, and yeah, uh, yeah, grew up here, and it's just a killer place. Musically, it's pretty amazing, especially from a rock point of view. Like, probably the most famous musical export is the band Silverchair from
Hmm.
here, and yeah,
Nice. That's great. I mean, I grew up listening to Frog Stomp, man. You can't you can't
yeah,
roll
yeah,
that by me. Um,
yeah, exactly.
but that one album, man, was it Diorama that they put
Mm,
out? Man, that thing. So
yeah,
another part of my musical heritage is power pop. So
yep,
like when that record came out and the guy that I was in a band with at the time showed it to me, I was like, "Holy crap, this is so different than what those dudes first did." And
yeah, yeah. They
it's like,
definitely progressed a long way, and
yeah.
I was there the same age as me or a year older than me, so I was super jealous when I was young. I just couldn't stand them and couldn't listen to them. But Ben, the drummer from the band, I played in his band for quite a few years, going back years ago, and he's a good friend now. And the bass player from the band owns like a few of the venues in town that I play at now. So
Nice.
they're sort of all part of the city, which is awesome.
That's cool, man. What kind of
Yeah.
music were you doing or are you doing with the drummer in that band? Like, what was the
Uh,
project?
he had a band called Bento at the time, and it was just sort of, I guess, alternate pop rock, and he was the singer in it. So
Oh,
he,
okay.
yeah, just took on that way, and yeah, we unfortunately didn't get to do many shows. It sort of, yeah, whatever happened, it didn't really quite take off the way to plan, but it was a really fun time, and just got to play with. He always had like the best guys playing, and so a lot of the guys that I met, quite a few awesome musicians through that project, especially this Hammond organ player Lockie Doley, who's done a lot of international stuff now, and he was just getting off the ground at the time, so that was really cool to be able to play with him, and then we did a lot of things together after that. Yeah,
Oh, that's cool, man. That's super
yeah.
cool. So let's dive back. I want to hear the Adam Miller trajectory. I want to hear the pathway because with all of my guests, I always talk about like the moment that
Mm.
you kind of like gravitated towards music or gravitated towards wanting to pick up a guitar. Do you remember, is there like a cerebral moment where you're like, wow, this is what I want to do?
Um, I don't know if there was the cerebral moment of getting into music, and so I like but I don't think I ever thought I would do this. Like it wasn't. It sort of went against everything of my safe, sensible sort of brain to actually be a musician, and it's still a bit weird. But I started playing organ when I was 4. Went to organ lessons, and they were really cool because it was with this method called the Yamaha method, and that's very strong on ear training.
Mm-hmm.
So that was awesome. Then then I just picked up a guitar like when I was around 8 years old because my dad had one. And when I first picked it up, I just transposed the keyboard onto each guitar string and just started playing from there.
That's so smart. Were you playing
Just
like dual manual stuff, or were you doing like?
no.
Okay,
Like
okay.
when I say an organ, I mean like it had pedals, but it was like the one with the beats that
Oh,
people had
nice.
in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, there's a Leslie ripping in the corner or
Right.
something.
What's
It
that?
wasn't cool and I wasn't good.
It's still cool.
I just did it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still cool,
Mm.
man. Yeah, I mean, all that stuff is, I like the idea of like my kid wants to start doing like some instrument, like guitar. I've been teaching her guitar and she's kind of going back and forth. There's a piano in the house, there's a drum set. So she's kind of open to doing whatever. But
Mm.
I think that there's like this practicality of a lot of people start on piano because it's so transferable to our instrument in terms of harmony and understanding chords and all that stuff. Like people don't really realize that basically all of music theory is right in front of you instead of the piano. You know what I mean? It's like it's
Yeah.
all right there, man.
Yeah.
But is there like when was guitar and like what led to guitar? Was there a
Uh,
specific band or music or anything that pushed you?
there, there was I remember the first song I learned, and it's no one outside of Australia will know about this, but it was this guy named Craig McLaughlin, and he's a little bit infamous, and he was like a soap opera star, and then
Really?
moved to music, and he's quite a good guitar player. So that was the first stuff I really learnt. Like I got into that and wanted to play one of his songs. It was called Hey Mona, and it was like, oh well, I've got a guitar, I'll play quick. But it was
Yeah,
like
yeah, play,
it
play.
was actually funky. It was like it was actually like a pretty cool, funky little thing. So,
Nice.
yeah, so it was that. And just through being in Australia, like it was only after maybe 3 weeks of playing a guitar that my mum bought me a Tommy Emmanuel cassette because he'd been on like, he was on like TV all the time in that stage. He just sort of released his first album, and but he was always like either in the band on like the equivalent of like the Letterman show or something. So he was
Hmm.
the guitarist in the band, or like a pop star would come on and it'd be like this person but featuring Tommy Emmanuel on guitar.
Right.
So that he would be on all the time. So yeah.
Yeah. Is
Mm.
there so Tommy Emmanuel is like a enigma to me. Um, I feel
Yeah.
like there's like because I first saw him, I probably saw like a YouTube. Are you hearing like a little? Okay,
Yeah. I was
yeah,
thinking it was a phone or something and I just moved it away. So
okay. I
maybe it
think
was
I
that.
first saw him. I mean, like probably like everybody sees him with like the classical gas thing.
Mm.
Um, and then I didn't realize. So his lineage is definitely like Chet Atkins, right? Like that's kind of where
It
he really cut his teeth.
To an extent, but yeah, but then he was the number one session player in Australia from when he was like 16 years old. He was on
Jeez,
every album there was.
man.
And then, he toured the world with this band Dragon, who were a huge thing, and that was like the early 80s. And yeah, he's just done all of it. And the albums that I've got of his that first started, they were predominantly electric guitar. They were the
Mhm.
Telecaster things. So that was really the stuff that I got into. And to, I guess, put it simply, like I was playing guitar when I was 9 or 10 or something. And when I was trying to sing along to things that I liked, I sounded terrible because my voice hadn't broken. So when I played along to Tommy Emmanuel things, I sounded exactly the same, I thought.
Right.
So that was sort of what like really led me to instrumental music and that sort of vibe.
Right.
Mm.
What's the first, if there's an entryway into Tommy Emmanuel as far as like solo career stuff that he started doing, what would you say if no one's heard him and you were like, if you have not listened to this cat, you got to listen to this record. What record would you say? Because I need to get caught up on him too.
Yeah, look, from a solo guitar point of view, it's the record only, but I'm not sure. I've got a feeling it's not widely available.
Hmm.
There's some record company thing, I think, that means it's like not on, the streaming outlets and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that one, but some of his older, like The Journey, I think is a great album. So, or The Journey Continues. I'm not sure what's online. I still have it on cassette or CD. But it's sort of it's got all this amazing electric guitar stuff and all this amazing acoustic guitar stuff, and it just shows this full breadth of like what he can do. And
Mm-hmm.
it's from the mid '90s, so it's still listenable production wise.
Mm-hmm.
Some of his early stuff is like drum machines and very '80s, so I tend to not recommend that. But yeah,
Do you cringe at all when you hear some like 80s fusion guitar tone? Like there's some like friends of mine who kind of love that, Mike Stern, Holdsworth kind of chorus laden tones and stuff. But do you cringe at all? Like sometimes like
chorus, unless it's fully wound up to be like a rotary speaker, I can't handle. Like, even in the last several years, the little bit of session work I've done, especially back in Australia, where like all the thing at the moment is like chorus on guitar again, and those really like chorusy chords, like sus2 chords with chorus on it. It does my head in, and to the point where I can't listen to Schofield in the chorus era.
right.
Like John Schofield is one of my favorite guitar players ever, and I just can't listen to it. I cannot put those records on where he's got the chorus pedal on all the time.
Yeah.
And and same with Frizzell actually as well, who I love the stuff with the volume pedal and compressor, which is the thing that most people got into Frizzell on. It just doesn't speak to me at all. I've tried. It does my head in.
The SCO thing from like a go-go on is like my jam.
Exactly.
Like that
and
era.
And this really early stuff as well. There was an album that just got put online like the same week as his current new album, and it's in Japanese, but it's apparently his first album, and it's insane. It's like
I don't know if I've heard that.
It's this cover. It looks like he's on the Staten Island ferry, the photo, and it's just blue sky in the background and him with hair. So it's definitely worth. That album has blown my mind in the last few months. Yeah,
that's awesome. That the Bill Frisell thing. So this will all tie in perfectly because I remember the first time I saw you playing was on Premier Guitar in their headquarters, and it was a live thing. It was like a live Q&A and stuff, and you were playing.
Yeah,
and I remember
it was like 100 degrees that day as well. I'd driven, I think, from Chicago straight there.
Oh wow!
In Iowa, and oh man, that was a rough day. And the rental car we had didn't have air conditioning in it, and it was just like,
oh dude, driving through the flatlands and it's like 99 degrees. It's like, man, I would say so that day when you were on that, it was probably. Was that in the evening or was that like during the day? I can't remember, but
neither can I.
I just remember you playing and I loving what you were doing. And I remember being like, can you ask him if he's like influenced by Bill Frisell? And then like Jason said something and you're like, yes, absolutely, blah, blah, blah. And then there was something else I can't remember. I was like, how about, and I said something else and you're like, yes, oh my God, was this person like in my biography or something? Yeah. But I totally hear it in your playing, but I also hear like, you totally have your own voice, but it's so cool to have like some of that stuff just bubble up every now and again. And what I heard from you that was Bill Frisell is your vibrato.
Yeah, sure.
But like that. So East West was my entree into Bill Frisell, and I heard it through the grapevine. Was like the first thing I heard.
Yeah, cool.
And I was like, "What is this? Who is this?" Talk a little bit about his influence on you, because it seems like you love that cat.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I guess I'll just go back for a second to where we're coming from. So, you know, from my early guitar days, it was Tommy Emmanuel was the guy, I guess, and just all of that. And everything was about being really, really good and really, really fast and entertaining a crowd. And it was definitely contrary to who I am as a person in a way. And I was always like sort of fighting it a little bit. And I got into Bill later, like in my late 20s, really. And I heard him in a movie soundtrack in, Finding Forrester.
Oh
And it
yeah.
was him playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which I've heard played millions of times by millions of guitar players, but I'd never heard that simplicity and voicings. And from there, it was just like, yeah, I just got lost in everything. And it was a good time because there was so much back catalog to go through. But then he also releases, you know, 2 or 3 albums every year, it seems like, as well. So it's just endless stuff to sort of go through. And, um, from a tonality point of view and from a musical point of view, I just found I could listen to it all the time. So it sort of took over my world. Like it was like, if I couldn't handle listening to, intense guitar music, or I rarely ever listened to vocal music, I could always put that on. So that's where it, yeah, sort of got to.
Was there a Adam Miller rock phase? Like, what was the like, you know?
Yeah, totally, man. I was like in, you know, end of high school, end of going into when I was at university. Like I played in a band that, well, there was one band in high school that only played Rage Against the Machine.
Nice.
So I played all that stuff. And then the band I was in that, you know, nearly was huge, but not quite, were very much like the Chili Peppers. So it was all funky and riffs and yeah. So there's definitely that. And yeah, there's still a lot of that in me. Like some of my favorite music from that time. Oh, the other one that's huge, and I've been going back to it more recently, is The Living End. I don't know if you're familiar with them,
I
but
don't know that band.
yeah, check it out. They're like sort of punk. They were late '90s, and they're still
Mhm.
going, but very Stray Cats influence. So
Oh, neat.
Gretches and yeah, but Chris Chaney, the guitar player, is incredible and has like all the Chet Atkins chops as well, and sort of incorporated that into mainstream, definitely Australian rock. They've done a lot of touring overseas as well, but and then elements of AC/DC and all that. It's really cool. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay. I will check
yeah,
that out. You said The
mm,
Living End?
yeah,
All right, I'm writing it down.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that. So I'm always looking for new stuff to kind of listen to and inspire
mm,
me, and it's. I don't know about you, but I mean, there's so many different genres of music that I like. Like my uncle's a bluegrass musician,
mm,
so like he plays dobro,
yeah,
and so I mean, I got heavy into resonator stuff, and he introduced me to the Beatles, and so
mm,
like, but there's you know jazz and funk and blues and R&B and soul, and my
yeah,
favorite band Pearl Jam, and like it's like
yeah.
the Wood Brothers. Like I'm all over the map, so I'm usually open to whatever. But man, one thing I can't do is I can't listen to country and or reggae all night. Like that will kill me. Like
All night. Yeah, yeah, definitely
I
not.
don't know what it
Yeah,
is. I think the reggae thing, I like it for a little bit, but I think the and
yeah,
and for too long, I
yeah,
feel like that's
yeah.
all I hear.
So that
Um,
and Scar, which is that way faster.
yeah, but that for
Yeah.
some reason that's more palpable to me. I guess because it's
Okay.
like a higher energy type of a thing.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, for some reason, I mean, and I appreciate country music
Mm.
and all that stuff. I just can't, like, if someone tried to call me to play on a country gig, I'd be like, I'm not your dude.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
not
yeah.
your dude.
I played some pretty big country pop things for a while. Like the biggest gigs I've ever done were actually playing in a like session playing for a country artist in Australia and doing arenas. So it was an interesting time.
Yeah. Is country music a big thing over there? Like, I know there's probably a big market, like Keith Urban and
It's
whatnot.
huge, yeah,
Mm.
but it's only recently. Um, Australian had its own. country music culture, I would say. And that's a lot of what Tommy Emmanuel grew up in as well. With what's the style is sort of called bush ballads. And so it's very, how can I explain it? I'd have to say just lo-fi. It's not virtuosic at all. There's no like bluegrass sort of picking. It's very just,
Yeah.
it's very sort of, I like campfire, and, you know, focused on storytelling. And then it's progressed into the country pop thing now. And so many huge country artists are actually Australian that you may not even realize sometimes. But yeah, like Keith Urban did the hard yards. Like he did 25 years touring Australia just through the backlogs, and, you know, same thing, was playing guitar for everyone as well. And it took him a long time before he like cracked it to where he is now. So
Man, he's a great player too. He's an awesome
yeah.
player. What are so we talked a little bit about Tommy and about Bill and Sco. Like what are the records that made you think I need to work harder on my instrument? Like are there some specific records that you like transcribed and you really worked on? Because you have some crazy chops in terms of like solo guitar and solo jazz guitar stuff. So it was like, you know, are there any players, Grant Green or any of those cats that you got into?
So I think one thing for me was my music exposure was limited when I was young. You know, access to music was just different. You couldn't just go, here's that record, here's this. I didn't have as many older people like showing me things when I was younger. So I was into sort of the normal things like Hendrix and that, and then everything that was jazz or left stream basically came from Tommy Emmanuel albums. So that was this huge thing. And when you go back into his old stuff, like there is stuff that's like Satriani to jazz to all those things are sort of on there. So it's sort of gave me that breadth of style and playing technique. Definitely that album Only I talked about was huge because it was just like this incredible solo guitar album, and I'd never really heard anything like that before. Martin Taylor's playing was a huge influence on me. Not that I really ever learnt anything, but I just really liked the sound of it all. So and that was another huge thing for me is I didn't really spend time transcribing things or learning things, because my first ever solo guitar gig when I was 18 was opening for Tommy Emmanuel. So straight up, I couldn't play anything he played. So I was always writing and, you know, stealing and interpreting things back to how I play. So that sort of informed a lot of where I went from that point on. So there was that. In the solo, and then the first Schofield records I got were really the things to go. I think it was Bump was the first one I got, and it was just like, I just thought he was terrible at first, but because back like CDs in Australia in those days were $30, so you actually, you know, if you just kept listening to it till you liked it, and then and then eventually it just all clicked, and I was just like, whoa, like this guy is incredible. And so that influenced a lot. And I was playing for a lot of people, but anything that was mine was still solo guitar. And then what was it, like John Mayer, Room for Squares, came out, and that sort of changed I think what was allowed on guitar at that time. Like guitar was still if guitar was in music, it was heavier and grungier. Like it wasn't pretty.
Right.
So that album went back to, you know, the neck and middle position on a Strat being cool.
Yeah.
And so, I thought it sounded cool. A lot of people didn't, but so that was huge. And then the song like Neon obviously was like, whoa, what was that? And I showed an older friend that, and he's like, oh, that's just Charlie Hunter. And I'm like, oh, who's that guy? And then that was the thing that blew my mind. So,
Right. Let's go
um,
there because you have a
yeah,
relationship with Charlie and like you play that instrument as well. So like tell me a little
yeah,
bit about how that all came about.
yeah. So that was just, so I was playing like, the groove, jazz, improvisation stuff, that Schofield sort of vein. But all the things in my world was still solo guitar, but it was all boom chick and the
Mm-hmm.
Chet Atkins thing because that's all I'd heard and knew. And then when I heard this record, I think it was Natty Dread. So talking about reggae,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
But that's a totally different that album I
yeah,
could listen to on repeat all day.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's Charlie Hunter's band doing all Bob Marley covers, and it's just insane. And I just couldn't believe it was real. And so then this was pre YouTube, so I was trying to find videos of him going, is this even real? What is
Mm-hmm.
this? And so on his website at the time, it had these tiny little videos that you could download that were like this big.
I remember
And
that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I got that and I was just like, this is ridiculous. So I was amazed because it was the first time I'd heard someone playing groove guitar and improvising. Like I hadn't heard Tuck Andress or anything like that. That had never come across my path.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it just blew me away. So that weekend, I went to a pawn shop nearby, bought a Strat, put two bass strings on it, pulled pole pieces out of the pickups and wired it so it would run 2 amps, and then I did a gig on it with a drummer the following weekend, and I was just like, yeah, this is awesome. Um, so it was just opened up this whole world to me of how to go about things and the way to approach the instrument differently and create music that was like relevant at the time. So this was like
Mm-hmm.
early 2000s, and um, when you were playing like boom chick stuff in, let's say, bars and pubs in Australia, like no one wanted to hear that. Like I think now it would be kind of cool. People would actually go, "Oh yeah, that's sort of like country stuff," and but then I couldn't hold an audience at all, but with groove funk stuff I could. So being able to interpret that back onto solo guitar was amazing.
Man,
Yeah.
that stuff and like that whole well, Naughty Dread's one thing, but like when I heard Oakland the first time,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
his song Oakland, I was like, hold on a
Yeah.
second. He's doing all that at the same
Yeah,
time?
it's
And
just it's
like,
just so I gotta. No, I can't play it on guitar. I don't have enough strings. But yeah, it's that. It's been too long since I've played it. So
I mean,
yeah.
that's when I had him on here. But it was I was telling him about like Mystico is one of my favorite records.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the reason I like that album is it's not so that album and like Gentlemen I Neglected to Inform You Will Not Be Getting Paid.
Yeah.
Those two records are like some of my favorite of what he does. And I think the cool thing about him and like people like you too, and I think all the guitarists that I really love to listen to, there's a fearlessness of like, I'm gonna just do what I want to do from record to record. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever's inspiring me right now is what I'm gonna
Yeah.
do. And
It's what's gonna happen.
yeah, and if
Mm.
you want to come along for the ride, cool. If not,
Mm.
I'll catch you on the next one, kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's something that I really like about that. But like to have the prowess, I don't know how. Like when you started working on that, so when you slap those strings on a Strat, first and foremost, I didn't know you were a tinkerer. Did you like? Have you always done that stuff, like messed with your instruments and?
That was the start of it,
Okay.
and it's got ridiculous from there.
Okay. What's the most ridiculous project?
Well, I then built a 7-string version from a 7-string Strat I got, and I completely reshaped the body so it looked more like a Novax, and you know, yeah. But uh, I'm pretty bad with acoustic guitars. Actually, designing acoustic guitar pickups is like I've spent a lot of time with my hand in the sound hole doing things and stereo things, and mid gig failures of systems that come unsoldered because yeah. So
Talk
yeah,
about that guitar. You just said that's a newbie.
yeah. So this one's built by Michael Greenfield. He's from Montreal in Canada, and I waited like 3 years I think for this, and
Ooh.
he's a really good friend. And I actually found his work through Charlie Hunter originally as well. He built Charlie, an 8-string and a 7-string nylon acoustic version of his guitar.
Whoa.
Which the only recordings of it, I believe, are on a Bobby Previtt album, Groundfather. I don't know how to say it. Anyway, there's a little bit of it on that, but he built Charlie those years ago. So,
Man.
but Michael's been a really good friend. So this is just a normal acoustic, Koa back and sides, but normal, just being that it sounds insane. But I've had fan fret acoustics and things in the past, and they just didn't quite work for what I did. So, yeah.
Do you want to play anything off the new record? Like talk, because I want you to promote the new record and everything. Do you want to play anything off that?
Yeah. Oh, I can talk about it. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the new record first, and then just play a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So released in August. The first album that I recorded, not in Newcastle actually, so it was recorded in LA in December last year. With the band that I used most of last year in LA when I was living there. These great musicians, Joel Gottschalk on bass, who spent years touring with Philip Sayce. He was in Philip Sayce's band.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Joel's epic. He's just so much fun, like just an incredible human, and just plays exactly what I want to hear on bass with the exact tone. It's just perfect. So nice. We don't really have much discussion there about what's going to happen. It just does. And then Justin Glasgow on the drums, who predominantly works as a producer in LA, I'd say, like more so than a drummer. And he plays every instrument really, really well. And we met at the Guitarco event at NAMM last year. And he was on drums for that, and then we just became really good friends. So the album was recorded at his studio, and it's, it was just all the songs sort of written last year while I was trying to work out life in the US more permanently and touring around. And, it came together pretty amazing. We tried to track it in 3 days. I actually was in Australia thinking about how I'm going to do this album. I was going to do it in Australia just because I don't have a studio, but I own gear, so I can sort of set up a studio anywhere I need to record, and that's how I've always done my albums in the past. But then I was just thinking about players and doing things, and I just found 3 days in December where I could fly to the US quick before Christmas and actually get this down. So that was super fun, and we tracked it predominantly live. Well, the bass and drums are all live, but I came home and re-recorded all the guitar because I wasn't happy with the tone I pulled in the studio.
That's fair, though.
Yeah.
You get a nitpick.
It was a bit of a bummer. I bought a new overdrive pedal and I used it all over the album, and then I got home and went, that's not really me. So
what was it, or do you not want to say?
It was a Hudson Broadcast.
Oh, okay, yeah. Those are. I feel like you got to take a minute to get to know those. Like I bought RELs.
No, sorry, continue.
Oh no, I was gonna say I bought RELs, and I wasn't like immediately like, how am I gonna use this? Because it's like it's got a certain taste to it. I love it, but it's got a certain taste.
I found it was amazing, but it just took me too far down into like Ariel's sound and like the Blake Mills sort of sound. I was just, I had it barely overdriven, but when I would play hard, it would turn to fuzz, which is a cool thing. But, there were times where I was listening back going, well, I'd really still like to hear the notes in that chord rather than just mush.
Yeah.
Did
you play it?
Yeah, I risked, to stop me risking using it ever again, I just sold it. So I wouldn't pull it out of the drawer.
Did you on that record? What guitars did you play on? Did you play your Telly, and did you play the Nick Huber on that record?
That's it, man. Okay. Yeah, those two guitars, and I played Thorell Archtop on a couple of songs.
Okay.
As well, but yeah, the Huber and the Telly are basically they're the guitars I play, and they're just insane. So like the Telly is a parts caster. I built it from parts years ago. It's a tinkerer's nightmare. under the guard. You know, so it's got like, it's a solid rosewood neck, one piece, which I think is pretty cool. It's a thin line body. The neck pickup, which I think is a huge part of the tone of it, is one of the Seymour Duncan mini humbuckers. So they're a Firebird pickup. So our Nico bar magnets. And I broke it when I was putting it in, broke the tabs off because they say to bend it to fit it in a telly body, and they broke. So it's super glued to pieces of rosewood that are super glued to the body. So it's in there forever.
Nice.
So that's cool. And yeah, that guitar's just been so good ever since I made it. It was just, the idea was, I was playing pretty normal guitars. Like I was playing Strats and Tellys and sort of 335 things. But whenever I played those guitars, I would take on the personality of the instrument. So like when I'd play a Strat, I would gravitate towards like the Stevie Ray, John Mayer side of things. When I'd play a 335, I'd try to play like Robin Ford. When I played, yeah. So
I'm sure you did all these really well too. I'm sure the impression.
Well, a lot of it was actually coming from, because I was known as an acoustic player. Like that was my whole international reputation for the longest time. And it was when I was moving to going, well, I'm doing all these electric gigs. This is actually the music that I love and what I write, and I want to do it. It was like, but I don't know what I put down as me in a way. Like I didn't have a sound yet. So it was, part of it was just building a guitar that I didn't have a preset sound in my head.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, I like humbuckers, but I always like single coils, but I'm not a big fan of buzz at gigs because I find it distracting. So, you know, that's where I just went, oh, this mini humbucker thing sounds cool. I'd never heard one. I just put it in the guitar, and I think it looks cool because it's got the old Seymour Duncan logo on it. So that was my choice.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you definitely have a fingerprint for sure, as far as like I could pick you out. Like I feel like when was it last NAMM that it was like you and Joey and Josh Smith were playing at like a 2 Rock party or something.
Yeah, yep, totally.
But like, you know, if I would close my eyes, I can tell each of you, obviously. And I think that's what's cool about that is, you know, there is a voice, there's a fingerprint for sure, you know?
Yeah, and once you sort of get off that, I think once you realize that in yourself, then it becomes more obvious. And a lot of it was why I played acoustic guitar for a long time and on records, because I couldn't work out, what my sound was. But when I played acoustic, I'm like, well, this is how I play. So it was really just translating that back to an electric guitar, just trying to forget about all the other things. And that it just took me a long time to do that. And I think years of session playing as well. I was doing actually, you know, it's not widely documented, but I was doing so much recording and touring with other artists for a long time, and always having to reproduce what they wanted. Not, you know, I wasn't hired as me. So it was like, just trying to find, myself in that. So,
it's a battle, man. I feel like, so like from the day that I started talking to you and we started talking through Facebook and stuff, and then just kind of rapping about, you know, the different artists that we both are obviously into, to the time when I was like, hey dude, so I'm going to get a 2 Rock, and I know that you know the product well. And you're the reason, you and Joey, because I talked to both of you guys about it, because I don't know if you remember this, but I was like, should I get the 212 or should I just get the one? You're like, just get the 112 is loud. It's plenty loud. And I'm glad I did it, because it's like, there it is, man. It's right wherever it is. It's right behind me somewhere. It's tan and somewhere.
Literally right behind you. Yeah.
But man, it's like, the only way I can describe it, that thing changed the way I play, and in a good way, like in terms of like, you can't hide anymore, brosif. Like you can't hide behind sloppy amp.
That was a huge part for me. Like I got my first 2 Rock in 2007. So it was early days, and I first found them. I'm pretty sure it was through Santana's website in 2000.
Really?
Before it was Two Rock, when the website was K&M Designs,
Yeah.
and I don't know, and because I was into getting into like Robin Ford and Larry Carlton and those things, they were really the first like jazz fusion stuff that someone had shown me, and I'm like, oh wow, I wonder what pedal they use. Oh, they don't use a pedal. Oh, they use this amp called a Dumble. Sweet. How much are they? At the time, 8 grand. You could get a Dumble for 8 grand still.
Yeah.
And I think a Two Rock was like 7 grand at that stage. So it wasn't that much difference. But to me in Australia, that was ridiculous. So um, I found an old Mesa Mark II C, and that was my amp for years. And then my first trip to the US, which was monumental, like it was, well, my first trip by myself, I should say. I went with my parents when I was a kid to Disneyland and stuff. But, the only place I could find near where I was going that had a Two Rock in stock was the Two Rock factory. So I went up there. They lived just north of my aunt's place in San Rafael. So went up there and was immediately like, yep, this is the amp. And, the guy that owned the company at the time was listening to me play, and he's just like, yeah, we'll do you an artist price, which I think was just him just not caring really. So I did it. I just ordered one there and then and got it shipped to Australia. But,
Man, what did you get at the time?
I got a Jet,
Oh yeah, I remember those.
which is that was the only little amp they did at that stage. So this was long before Studio Pros or anything like that, and it was still 2 channel. So it was like I guess the closest thing in the current range is like the Bloomfield. So it was overdrive channel, foot switchable boost, and reverb, and it did me forever. And I wish I still had it. Actually, I did sell it quite a few years ago. But it was an amazing amp, and it was always too loud.
Yeah.
Where I played, like it was the combo, and I remember being in an arena like 20,000 people on one of these country gigs that I was saying I was doing years ago. It was the band I was playing in was opening for Brooks and Dunn.
Yes.
And I remember going, oh, wow, I can finally turn my Two Rock to like 3. And the front of house guy asked me to turn down.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah, they've got some headroom, man.
Yeah, it's pretty hectic. But yeah, and then it just sort of, my relationship with them developed really well after that. And then when they were owned by Premier Builders Guild, they decided to do like a tour through Europe to extend all the brand. But they wanted someone that could play solo or was willing to go out and just play solo everywhere. So they asked me to come along to do it, and that was just amazing.
That's awesome.
And yeah, that whole trip was like part of what led me back to electric guitar all the time, because I'd been touring so much with acoustic, and you run into sound problems every other night, like just with feedback or a sound engineer that wants to not put bass, wants to take all the bass out of your guitar. And I'm like, dude, like half my songs are a bass line.
Right.
And then on that like little in-store tour, even though it was in guitar stores, I had like killer sound every night because I just plugged into a Two Rock. Yeah. And I'm like, and it just seemed to work. So a lot of that led me back into like solo electric guitar playing more than solo acoustic guitar playing as well, because it just was every night sounded good to me, because I was hearing it just through the amp. It was great. Yeah.
So are you now, when you're gigging around town, are you taking the Studio Signature, or are you have the Burnside too, right?
Well, yeah. So I have a Studio Sig in LA.
Oh, okay.
So I don't, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to see that for a couple of years.
Right.
Yeah. In Australia, I have a Burnside, which is a little 112 combo based on sort of a Tweed Super circuit. And I love that amp. That thing's just, it sort of has that Two Rock vibe still, but with a little bit of the Tweedy grit. But I can't play it loud enough anywhere to actually get into overdrive. But it's, I really like what it does. It's sort of, it just cuts through a room no matter where I am. It just works. And then I also have a classic reverb signature with
Okay,
a
cool.
112 cab here. And that's like what I used on all the new album.
Nice,
I
nice.
just use that amp because it just records insane, even at low volumes, which I record at too. Like my master volume is really never past what 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it, and yeah, it just translates so beautifully into microphones. So it's weird that I've got this big amp for recording, and I take out the little one for gigs most of the time. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
I mean, the combo thing, man, I've often thought about this. I was like, because I really want to get, do you know about Headstrong,
yeah,
that company? I really
yep,
want to get one of their Little King, like the
mm,
Princeton with the
mm,
12.
yep,
But I was like, or do I just really want to get a studio signature in a combo too? Because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just such a great amp. And it's like, it's not punishingly loud, even though it's 35 watts. I never
No,
find it, even when I'm in this room playing,
yeah,
I never find it like it's like punishing my ears at all. It's got this like,
yeah. They're pretty
you know,
soft in the way they translate. Like especially when you turn the deep switch on at low volumes, just hollows out the frequencies that would hurt people. Sort
hmm
of. It's really effective for that when you're playing low volumes, which is why I tend to always have the deep switch on if you see amp setups of me ever, because it just makes it sit softer at those low volumes.
yeah.
But yeah, they're definitely very, very handy, and yeah, I can't say enough good things. Like I just don't play anything else. I have a '60s Vibrachamp which I play sometimes, but it never really goes out of the house. And I recorded a bit of my last album. Two of the songs were with the Vibrachamp, just so I didn't have to use an overdrive pedal on those songs, but could have a little bit of drive. But yeah, for the most, like, yeah, what is it? 14 years of playing Two Rocks now. It's hard for me to really turn up with anything else. So,
They're just
and
really
I can,
good.
yeah, I just like that I can then plug different guitars in. That changes the sound. I'm just not looking for anything else. The
hmm
one area where gear acquisition syndrome is not an issue.
Yeah, I hear
Yeah.
you. But pedals, let's move over that. So you and I are both huge fans of the Flint. I know you love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally, man.
Um, but
Mm.
are there anything I know, and the Jan Ray too? We both love that.
Mm.
But is there anything else that has been blowing your mind that you have been using lately?
So there's only three other pedals I use ever, actually. Um, three? No, let's say four. Yeah, four pedals. So overdrive wise, the one that has blown me away forever, and a lot of people have asked me about what this pedal is and what this drive comes from, is a Nordvang Custom. And Henrik Nordvang is from Denmark, and he used to work at Bang& Olufsen. That's where he did like his electrical trade there, and he makes, they're essentially clones, and he's just changed production now, and he does three models that are, and they're all sort of named after John Mayer things. He's a huge John Mayer fan, so he's gone sort of that way. But the original one was meant to be a clone copy, but it's not. He did things in the circuit, now that I know that he thought, I don't know if he knew they were right or not. Anyway, there are different things about it. I know that now, and it has this incredible sort of fuzzy texture to the overdrive. So it's so touch sensitive, it's ridiculous. So, the solo in my song Habit is that pedal, and it's the telly into that, into the classic reverb signature.
Mm.
And it's just, yeah, perfect. So that pedal is pretty special.
hmm
Um, the
Is that
only
a dual
reason
channel pedal or is that just a
they are
single?
now. This one is single channel, so
Okay.
it's before he's gone into the dual channel things. Um, and yeah, the only reason that pedal comes off my board, and I probably should just do a mod, is I can't handle the clon buffer.
Mm.
I can really hear how that buffer changes the feel of my amp and
Interesting.
and the clean sound. So, while most people are like, yeah, man, it's the clon buffer is the thing you want, For me, I can feel it taking away from things.
Yeah,
So that's why it sometimes is off. But I probably should just get it modded to true bypass, and then
you'd be happy.
so yeah. So that the Jan Ray definitely was just a pedal that was I didn't really know anything about it when I got it. I did get it for in Japan when I was touring there,
Hmm.
and I just didn't know what it did, and I just found it was really cool at pulling this thing of like, same of going back to the guitars. I'm like, I don't know what this does, so I didn't have a preset idea in my head of what tone it should pull.
Hmm.
So I just pulled sounds I liked out of it and just played with the knobs and definitely the one that's on the screw at the top, I find is a pretty major one. So when I've got that on my board, I've got the screwdriver on Velcro to
Yeah,
actually be
buddy.
able to change that because it's, I find that's a huge adjustment in the way it feels again and the frequency response.
Hmm.
Um,
How do you
on the,
use it? And like in your gig, do you use it as an always on kind of thing, or do you use it for more gritty?
nah, just, I find it's good just for sort of full range sort of grit, I guess. So sort of the always on thing, but I don't really do always on.
Hmm.
I'm sort of an always off guy.
Yeah.
Is more the way I sort of go. That being said, on the new record, because of where I ended up having to record it and play at low volumes, I did end up using, like I said, when I initially recorded it, I had the broadcast into my studio SIG in LA, and then when I came home, I used a what is it? A Free the Tone SOV2. So sort of
Oh
like the
yeah.
one Matt Schofield uses.
Hmm.
That's on all the time on nearly every song on the new album. But
Mm.
like super low gain and just it has a really similar sonic signature and this sort of fuzziness about it as that Nordvang pedal, but it
Hmm.
just had a little more bottom end, I found. So that's why it sort of ended up on for most of the art. And the Nordvang switch broke. Something did go. It wasn't working properly, so I couldn't use it.
Oh, interesting.
So that pedal is like on for nearly every song on the new album. So that one's
That's
really
cool.
cool. Um, and then the only other two pedals I use are for like the ambient stuff, like the Frizzell background things. And so a Strymon Timeline, which I used for a long time, like the DL4 looper that he uses.
Mm.
And so it's got a MIDI controller hanging off it to access reverse and halftime. And it's actually got a knob as well for the volume of the loop. So I can just change that with my feet as I go.
Oh, cool.
Uh, so that one's been really cool. And then because I was moving back to the US and literally like, you know, gear size is a super priority from touring and traveling, I then got the Chase Bliss Mood to sort
Mm.
of do that because I wasn't doing as much of that looping stuff. The Chase Bliss Mood I've set up in a way that whatever I play for the last few seconds, it just instantly loops in reverse when I hit one button.
Oh
And
man.
so that's awesome. So it's just this really quick way if I'm in the middle of something and go, oh, I just want something in the background behind me, then I can just go, and then it just goes, and I don't have to hit start, don't have to hit stop, don't have to hit. It's just one button because it just is constantly listening to what you're doing. So
Oh man, I gotta check that thing out. I played the Brothers a little while
mm,
ago, like a month
yeah,
ago.
yeah,
That thing, woo, man, it is.
mm,
It's got some mojo in it. Like my buddy let me borrow. He was about to sell a bunch of stuff, and he let me borrow that and a few other pedals so I could demo them on my channel.
mm,
And I do all my demos like I just plug in and I'm like a dude in a guitar shop. I've never
yeah.
played this before. I just want to see what it's like
Here it
and
is.
twist
Yeah,
knobs. And I was like, man, I feel like I could spend 3 hours with this thing and still not crack the
yeah,
surface. But those pedals for me, like all the Chase Bliss stuff, until I played that one, I was like a little intimidated by them
yeah. Me too,
because
man. Like I tried out the Mood. I remember going into Mesa Hollywood. It must have been in January. Oh, I don't. Anyway, I went to look at it and I was just like, I don't know. Like I can't make this do anything. I'd read the manual before, and I'm like, I think this could do what I want it to do, like a tiny pedal that can do a quick loop,
Mhm.
and that I can have a delay on, just a really simple delay if I want it. And yeah, I couldn't work it out. And then I was looking at all my stuff, packing and traveling, and I'm going, timeline with a MIDI controller is this big, mood is this big.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm just going to buy one and see what it can do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it took me a couple of hours, and then I immediately just got this preset that just has this little, not quite a slap back delay it's just this perfect delay time that I just use in solos if I just feel like I need something to bounce off in this reverse loop. And then I set up another one, which is almost, let's say, it's my heard it through the grapevine setting.
Mm.
And that's, it's a reverse delay on one side. And then the other side is this arpeggiating reverse loop. So whatever I play, it arpeggiates it through the clock. So it's like, like it kind of sweeps through. Yeah.
Dude, now you got me wanting to check that out, man.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. Like, I think especially the mood has been so geared to people that, like, what am I trying to say? That are on the floor, like twiddling knobs. But I just found these couple of really cool things that just mean they're like, I barely have to touch it to create these things.
Right.
And it's, it's pretty cool. I just did a couple of like online gigs, and I used it in that, and you can kind of see me like just creating these quick little loops.
Oh, I'll go back and check it out.
And they're on Nick Huber's Facebook page and the Two Rock Facebook page, and they'll be up for a couple more weeks, I think, before
okay.
take them down so they're not in perpetuity forever.
Right. Dude,
yeah.
I would be shocked if Ed O'Brien doesn't have a bunch of their stuff now. Because he would be
sort of hope
rocking
so.
that.
I bet it's just, I'm not the kind of guy that's gone, oh yeah, now I need to get this Chase Blaze pedal. I'm like, that's enough. And even, looking at the blooper, which is their actual looping pedal, I went, well, that's too much for me. If I need something that does all that, I'd rather just have the timeline where I can actually fit my foot into pushing the buttons, and I have a button for everything instead of trying to remember where everything is. So
yeah. But the mood sounds cool. I know Ariel uses that for his slapback. It's all that power in that pedal, and he's like, I just like the slapback.
Well, it is pretty cool. Like because it's based off this clocking thing of what the digital clock is. So to get a long loop, you actually have to have it fairly degraded, which I like as well. So the loop is like a little crunchy instead of being this pristine digital loop, I guess. And then, and then because of that, the delay is a little crunchy as well. So I sort of like what it's doing there. And it's just, it's really cool just to be able to have that access quick, and it only take up one space on my board because I'm like on the little, nano size pedal train. So it's usually just one or two overdrives, the mood and the flint, and I can do all this sort of cool stuff.
That's all you need, man.
Yeah, on the new album, so the new album is called Unify, because I just realized I hadn't mentioned that. Everything you hear in the background that's like weird is the mood doing things. And there's a couple, like in the song Adam Levy, it sort of sounds like there's an organ on it, and that's the like, I can't remember the modes now, what they're called. Anyway, like it's a mode sort of like a freeze that holds the note out. And so I just played like octaves of C because the song's in the key of C, and then I played with the clock, which changes it in fifths almost.
Oh, wow.
And so you can kind of hear this thing in the background that goes, and it's just me playing with the mood that I just made this loop and then just did this thing in the background and sort of played it to the song after I'd recorded all the rest of it, just to give it a little background vibe.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
A lot of cool things like that. And the song Shipping, I went a bit crazy with it too. There's like, I think there's 3 different parts that I played using it, and just had it spontaneously playing these little loops, but I would stop and start the loops compared to what the chord was. So you can just sort of play a little bit and then it would throw something off an octave higher in reverse for a
Man,
second. So yeah.
dang it! Now I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to check this thing out.
Yeah. Just as a little easy thing, once you've done the sort of hard work at home on the gig, it's awesome.
Yeah. Did you
Mm.
ever mess with the thing I love about the Flint, and I did it yesterday on my Instagram channel, is like if you put it on that 80 setting and you put the decay all the way up, so
Yeah.
there's no decay.
Oh,
Have you messed with
yeah.
that?
Yeah, so it's sort of just infinite.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I
but the other settings don't really do it. Like the 60s and the
no.
70s setting don't, but the 80s does, and it creates the most lush, gorgeous thing to play over, but it's really like you have to really be conscious of how much you're playing.
Yeah.
It's
I was
dope.
using that for a little while actually when I was playing Habit live, just to have this pad of a G going underneath it. I would
Yeah.
use the Flint. If I was playing through a 2-rock with reverb, then I would use the Flint just for that song to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That pedal is
And then
probably
switch
my
it
favorite.
off.
Yeah.
So it was like, so the spillover of that reverb just continued through. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
That's
fade it.
probably my favorite pedal I own, man. And it's weird because it's just a reverb and a tremolo.
Yeah, well,
I
it's the
love it.
one that I'm just using, and especially with like the Burnside that I use here, it doesn't have reverb in it, so that's and it just works. It's perfect. The Flint on acoustic guitar is amazing as well. I've just started using it all the time for that now, where it's
Man.
in the effects loop of my Grace Design preamp, and it just is beautifully clean, and I don't know, it just doesn't have too much bottom end. You can obviously filter the top end enough, and yeah, it just works without having to think too much. And I went through a lot of reverb pedals before that one.
What else did you gonna go through? I know I've had a ton too, but
Like Hall of Fames, the T-Rex tube one. I don't know, old Boss ones. I
dude,
don't
I just
like
sold.
so many.
Yeah, I just sold that Boss Reverb at 63,
Oh yeah, yep.
FRV1. I bought it 8 years ago for 100 some bucks, and I sold it for almost $300. For some reason, they went through the
They're
roof.
discontinued now. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
become a thing. Yeah.
yeah. But I was like, I'm not using it. The Flint's awesome.
Mm.
So, do you want to play like a snippet or anything off the record before we do lightning round or
Oh, I
anything?
can, man. Like, let me just think of like something sort of cool. Like, I'll just play a little bit of Adam Levy quickly.
Yeah, man.
That tune. So it's just what is it? Yeah. So that was
Gorgeous.
I wrote that for my friend Adam, who's quite a famous guitar player. So yeah, and just sort of personified him in a way through music, to my ears at least.
Yeah. Oh,
Just imagine him coming in for a big hug, which
yeah,
is a big
yeah.
thing.
No, I can hear it. I can hear it,
Yeah.
and because I mean, I grew up watching him play with Nora Jones, man.
Mm,
You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
that's beautiful, man. My favorite track on the new record is West Hollywood.
Yeah,
It's
it's super
funky,
interesting.
man.
It is a funky song, and I cannot get it right yet. I've been playing it live again, and it just, I don't know. The record nailed it, and then every time I play it live now, it's just not quite there. So
What is it? What's wrong? Like, tell me what you think it is.
I don't know. It's a really difficult thing with the feel, and it was based off. I saw this jazz gig in West Hollywood one night. I'm trying to think of who it was. It was a piano player, and they had this sort of thing like that, and and that's why it's sort of like low chords, because it's got this. Because I imagine it, low voicings on a piano, and but I don't know. It's just it's one of those things that it ended up on the record because it did really well, but it's just never quite translated when I've actually played it at a gig yet. So I've just got some work to do. It's not too bad solo actually, which I never thought I would be able to play it solo, but in live streaming lockdown gigs and requests for it, it comes out all right.
Can you play a little bit of it? I love it.
Yeah. So it's let me get all that in shot. No pick. No. But actually, it's pretty funky solo.
It's super funky, man. I love it.
I'm digging it solo, so maybe it's that part of the set.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think there's there's a stankiness to it too when you're playing by yourself, and I think even like you could probably even slow it down a little bit and be even stankier. You know what I mean? Like it's just I love that song, man. That whole record, I love it. Man. When it came out, I listened to it when I was working all the time, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So you ready for this lightning round get down?
I'm ready for this, yeah. It's a curated one. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, my daughter, I was telling Adam before this that my daughter was like, can you do this one? Sometimes, like, since I've been doing these, she, like, knows I do it. She's 9, so she's hip. She's aware. Yeah. And she's, when we eat dinner sometimes, she's like, do a lightning round on me, Dad. I'm like, oh, man, all right, here we go. So 105 BPM, my friend. Yep. This is just to raise the awareness of the level of intensity that's going on around us.
Yeah, cool.
Or the level of intensity that is gone now as of this past Saturday. Yay, America.
One small level. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you can explain answers if you want to. You don't have to. You can just burn through them. Whatever you want to do. But the first question is always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
I'm going to say McCartney for the baseline influence.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. NYC or LA?
Well, it's definitely LA now. It was always NYC, but there's too many apartments.
Okay. All right, this might be a hard one. Your hollow body or your telly?
I'm going to say my telly.
Okay. Because it's a joy because you put it together yourself.
Yeah. And I don't stress about it as much. It's a little more solid.
Yeah. All right. Winter Nam or Summer Nam?
Oh, Winter Nam for sure.
Okay. So for a snack, salty or sweet?
Sweet.
Captain Kirk or Captain Picard?
No, let's go Captain Kirk.
Okay. New Year's Eve gigs, cool or overrated?
Oh, definitely overrated.
All right.
But I'll accept the money. Like, that's the thing. New Year's Eve in general is overrated. So I'll just have the money.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Surfboard or body surf?
Ooh. Well, see, I would say bodyboard.
Okay.
Because that's what I used to ride, but I haven't done it for a long time. So, yeah.
Some good
in between.
Some good waves down there where you are, man.
Definitely.
Winter or summer?
Summer.
Okay. And then this is the last one. Yeah. This is always the hardest one, man. So beware. It might be easy. Okay. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm nervous.
Frizzell or Schofield?
Frizzell.
Instantaneous. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to know why that was so instant with you.
It's just the ease of listening and the composition. Okay. Yeah. It's like, as from a listening point of view, like, I can listen to Schofield, but then I'd go after a heavy week of it. I can't do it anymore, and then I go back to like Ghost Town.
Yeah.
That album.
Did you ever get
And
into Soul Live and all that stuff, like organ trio stuff like that?
not really, no. And honestly, it's just the access to music. Like I can't
Hmm.
explain. Like when you don't, because I taught at university for like the last 10 years as well, at a university in Australia, and I
Hmm.
just couldn't explain to my students like, and this was actually pre Spotify still, where I'd just put on a USB stick all this stuff they have to listen to.
Right.
But when I was growing up, like I couldn't do that. I couldn't afford to buy $30 records, like multiples all the time. So I just had these few things that I got deep into, and if you didn't have someone that told you about things, then you just didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's hard to explain. And then one of the big things actually that's hard to sort of talk about as well is the heavy influence of like Australian jazz on like my stuff. Like, so there was so many um, guitar players and especially bass players that were like a part of my world growing up, and the music I would go and watch that just blew my mind. So
Hmm.
like the one guitar player that everyone's got to check out, whether it's on YouTube or he doesn't have many albums out. It's a long story with Australians and productivity. Um, is James Muller, and he, like, he did have an article in Guitar Player once, and essentially it was because Schofield and Holdsworth were asked in separate articles who their favorite guitar player was, and they said this guy, and they're like, who? And so yeah, James is like insane.
Okay.
And he was a huge giant to me growing up. Like he's I'm gonna say he's like 5 years older than me, but he was just like the man. So
Hmm.
I haven't checked online what albums of his are currently available, but there's not much.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some YouTube stuff where you can check it out, and he's like somewhere between Holdsworth and Schofield, and
Okay.
all his own thing. And then this incredible bass player Steve Hunter as well, who was a big influence on me growing up in his music and the way he would compose. Um, and I've seen that his album Local World is now available, which is worth checking out. And James Muller is the guitar player on that album as well. So
Oh, okay. Well,
you
then we
get the
all have to go
double
check
the
that.
double deal. But I had Steve play on my album Shifting Units on a few of the tracks, and the song, what is it, Shifting Units in 4, he's on, and you'll hear like just this ripping bass solo. It's like
Mm.
Jarko. um I think Steve did end up playing with Chick Corea for a while actually,
Oh,
back in the
wow.
day. So I'm not entirely sure about that, but yeah, the influence of like the Australian scene and the Australian musicians was huge on me, because that's what I could actually go and see and witness in real life. Yeah.
There's something about that, I guess, it's instead of inundating yourself with so many different artists and so much music, it's like if you get locked into something, because you obviously are so good at what you do, man. And that probably all comes from like you just invested a lot of energy and time into this thing that you were exposed to that lit your
Yeah, and it was
fire.
always just like I I, I always sort of put a heavy, what's the word? Weight. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it will work, on like culture and the culture of where you grow up and where you live. And obviously like all the great music, like when you talk about New York in this time or LA in this certain time period, of what came out of it and what resulted of it. And I wasn't in New York, and I haven't, like, but where I was in Newcastle and Sydney, like there was just this certain thing happening, and culturally what you were allowed to get away with as a musician and make things work. That was and it still is a heavy influence on how I play. Like sometimes, even still, especially live when I'm at home here, I don't play the way I sort of want to, because I'm still playing the way culturally I feel like I need to play to get people into it. So I
Right.
sort of play faster and flashier then I would really want to play. And I choose songs like that because I'm still trying to go, oh yeah, this crowd really will only understand that. They're not going to hold attention if I play this, you know, soundscapey, beautiful thing sometimes. So,
Right.
you know, I've always seen how that's influenced my music and how certain things on albums, I'm like, yeah, that song would never have got written if I lived in LA like all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's so
And, you know,
interesting.
being in LA like a lot last year, I see how that's so heavily influenced my music, but also having the confidence to play things in a different way. Like that's where this album sort of is different because it stopped these certain tendencies I have to want to please a crowd, which
Mm-hmm.
is always hard because the gigs I do at home here are not instrumental or jazz gigs. Like there is a jazz club in Newcastle and it runs one night a week and I book it. So I can't play there all the time. But it's like, yeah, so the gigs I'm doing are just like rock gigs
Mm-hmm.
and I'm turning up and playing instrumental music. So it's sort of, it's part of, it definitely influences how I write, how I play. And, but it's just so much fun to see how people interact with things that they're not ready for or accustomed to. And that's sort of been my whole life. It's like, forever it was like, oh, you can't not sing. You have to
Right.
sing to do a gig. And then, you know, I started doing gigs and people started turning up and more people started turning up. And then it was like, oh, wow, well, no, I don't have to sing. It's cool.
Yeah. That's awesome,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
That's so great. Well,
Mm.
keep doing it, man. I love listening to you play.
Thanks, man.
And you know, the last record, this most recent record, guys, you got to check it out. It's on all streaming platforms. You can buy
Yeah,
it.
it's everywhere.
Where can they buy it too? Like, you know, just from straight
Just
from you.
Bandcamp.
Okay.
Bandcamp. So adammiller.com.au is the link off to there. And then, yeah, but just on Bandcamp. And then it's there in, oh, it's not super high res. I haven't done that yet. But it's, yeah, available in vinyl and CD as well. So, yeah.
Sweet. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for making the time, man. First,
Thanks so much for having me.
yeah, man. Actually, this is the second international at home with Mark, but the furthest
Cool.
distance.
Good. I need
So
to
you
claim
set the
something.
record there, my friend.
Yeah, we're nearly at the opposite sides.
Yeah, it's true. So thanks for coming out, everybody. I heard earlier I had a text from my buddy saying that there was some issue, people couldn't get in. I don't know what was going on earlier, but this lives forever on my YouTube channel, so it's evergreen.
In perpetuity.
Yes, so it'll be here. And then this Saturday, Corey Congilio is going to be on in the morning. So
Sweet.
you know that dude?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Actually, I met him at an airport in, I'm going to say Portland.
Oh, that's funny.
Just randomly. I was ordering coffee and he came and grabbed me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was, yeah, it was cool. Like,
Hey.
no, through the internet, but it was just, you know, the randomness of being on the road and traveling and you see someone with a mono case.
Right. That's so great. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day, Adam, and catch you guys on the flip side.
Take care. Thanks.